The air in your room just changed. You can't feel the draft yet, but your skin knows. Some things shouldn't be unearthed, and some hungers shouldn't be fed. Tonight, we aren't just telling stories, we are opening doors that were locked for a reason. From a child who forgot how to stay buried, to a collection of souls kept in rusted cages, and the sweet, metallic taste of a harvest you never asked for. We are descending into the places where the sun doesn't reach. Don't look behind you, just listen, because once you hear these names, they'll know you're listening, and they've been waiting a very long time for an audience.
The heat in Oklahoma did not just shimmer, it felt like a Stygian weight pressing against the earth, a suffocating breath of a dying world. I had escaped the rot of my small town, trading a stagnant life for the nomadic freedom of an ice cream truck, a gift from a friend that felt less like a blessing and more like a pact. I renovated the vehicle, turning it into a beacon of artificial sweetness amidst the parched playgrounds. But as the sun began its descent, casting long skeletal shadows across the park, I saw him. He sat upon a weathered green bench, a small figure draped in silence that felt unnatural, like a ghoul lurking in the periphery of a feast. While the other children swarmed the truck like 1,000 mindless tadpoles, their laughter a dissonant melody, this boy remained motionless. His head was bowed, his spirit seemingly tethered to the shadows of the old oak tree above him. Sensing a strange chill despite the summer air, I prepared a chocolate cone, intending it as an act of charity. Yet when I turned back, the bench was a void. The boy had vanished into the deepening twilight without a sound, leaving behind only the oppressive stillness of the approaching Maghrib. A soft, rhythmic thud against the service ledge shattered the silence of the truck's interior. I turned, and there he was, the boy from the bench, a specter of the gloaming. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and under the canopy of the tree, the shadows were thick and ancient, like the ink of a zaccoon tree. I couldn't see his face. It was a void beneath his brow. He didn't look up. Instead, he raised a small, trembling hand. "A strawberry cone, please," he whispered. His voice carried no warmth. It was the dry rattle of wind through a desert tomb. As he extended his arm, my breath hitched. His fingers were encrusted with thick, damp earth, and dark, clotted mud was packed beneath his jagged fingernails. It looked as though he had been clawing at the very gates of Barzakh. He held a crumpled dollar bill, his hand dangling in the stagnant air with an eerie, rhythmic sway. I handed him the pink confection, refusing the money, but he remained as still as a monolith. A primal instinct, a fear of the Malak al-Maut, urged me to just take the payment, to break the tether. I took the bill. It was cold and damp, and he turned to leave. When I asked his name, he didn't look back. "Mom told me never to talk to strangers," he droned, his obedience feeling less like manners and more like a terrifying, eternal decree. The following evening, the park felt heavy, as if the air itself was saturated with the scent of stagnant water and old bones. My eyes scanned the horizon, searching for the boy, Mikhail. Just as I began to pack the cooling tubs, thinking the Ifrit of my own imagination had finally let me be, a small, filth-stained hand gripped the metal desk. I gasped, a jolt of terror sparking through my nerves like a curse. "Geez, you scared me," I exhaled,
trying to summon a cheerful mask to hide my trembling hands. Mikhail stood in his usual pose, head bowed, a muddy dollar clutched in his fist. I attempted to bridge the distance, telling him we were no longer strangers, hoping to coax a spark of life from his hollow demeanor. He spoke his name in a voice that lacked any human resonance, flat, emotionless, and cold. As I reached out to take the money and hand him his strawberry shroud, my fingers brushed against his. A sickening sensation followed. With a wet, silent slide, the nail of his index finger peeled away entirely, revealing the raw, glistening red flesh underneath. There was no scream, no flinch, not even a hiss of pain. He simply turned away as dark, thick droplets of blood, blacker than ink in the twilight, began to mar the pristine white of my service desk. He walked toward the deepest, most overgrown corner of the park, where the weeds twisted like the hair of a mareed.
Driven by a morbid curiosity that felt like a whisper from Shaitan, I abandoned the safety of my truck and followed him into the suffocating darkness. The boy moved toward a colossal, skeletal tree at the park's edge, a place where the light of the distant street lamps died in the grasp of the shadows. There, Mikhail collapsed onto the earth. I watched, paralyzed by a cold, supernatural dread, as he began to claw at the soil with his bare, wounded hands. He dug with a rhythmic, frantic energy, his raw flesh tearing further against the stones and roots. Yet he made no sound of suffering. It was a ritual of the damned. When the pit was deep enough, he placed the strawberry ice cream, now a melting pink slurry, into the hole and began to cover it with dirt. I couldn't stay silent. I lunged from the brush, my voice cracking the heavy air as I screamed, "What are you doing? Are you hurt?" For the first time, Mikhail lifted his face. My soul shivered as if touched by the frost of Zamparine. Where eyes should have been, there were only twin abysses, dark, hollow sockets that stared back with an ancient, agonizing grief. "I want to go home," he wailed, his voice a chorus of the lost. "But no matter how much I dig to come out, I always end up here." Before I could reach him, his form flickered like a dying candle and vanished into the ether, leaving me alone in the screaming silence of the grave.
The dawn brought no clarity, only the cold iron of reality. I returned to the park to find it transformed into a landscape of fitna and despair. Yellow police tape hissed in the wind, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. A stench so potent it felt like a physical presence, the breath of Jahannam itself. I approached a trembling bystander, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "They found the missing boy," the man whispered, his face ashen. The truth was more horrific than any ghost story. The child had been taken by his own caretaker, a soul blackened by greed, who had strangled him and cast him into the earth under that very tree, while his heart was still beating. Mikhail had not died instantly. He had awakened in the crushing, suffocating darkness of the soil. The missing nails, the raw flesh, they weren't from digging into the earth, but from his desperate final struggle to claw his way out. As the paramedics carried the small shroud-covered stretcher away, I saw the empty, hollow sockets where the vermin of the earth finished what the killer started. The boy's spirit had been caught in a loop of his final agony, eternally trying to dig toward a home he would never reach. He was finally unearthed, but as I looked at the dark, distant soil under the tree, I knew the shadow of that warm summer evening would haunt my soul until the day it joined him in the dust.
Nahid Hassan disappeared just 2 hours after sending me this recording. And when I played it, I realized he wasn't alone. You're now on Nightfall Horrors 002, and there's no turning back.
The year was 1993, a time when the air in our neighborhood grew thick with the scent of fear, as if a Dajjal had cast a shadow over our streets. Children were vanishing into the ether, leaving behind nothing but grieving mothers and empty bedrooms. Yet, amidst this growing cough, a beacon of false hope arrived. The ice cream truck of Mr. Williams. He was a man carved from the very essence of the uncanny. He did not drive a standard vehicle. His truck was a gargantuan, rusted RV that loomed over the curb like a mobile tomb. Mr. Williams himself possessed a gaze that felt like a physical violation. His eyes lingered on us with a predatory hunger, as if he were a Sela surveying a feast of innocent souls. But it was the ice cream that truly ensnares. It possessed a cloying, unique sweetness that defied nature, a flavor so addictive it felt as though it were laced with a dark sear. We craved it with a feverish intensity, unaware that the secret ingredient was seasoned with the salt of our own impending tears. One sweltering afternoon, the heat clinging to the skin like a wet shroud, I returned from school and found the usual swarm of children surrounding the RV. Seeking a moment of respite from the frantic crowd, I drifted toward the rear of the massive vehicle. The air back there was stagnant, smelling faintly of sour milk and rusted iron. As I stood in the heavy silence, a sound vibrated through the metal, a rhythmic, muffled thumping, accompanied by a low, guttural whimpering. My heart began to pulse with a frantic rhythm, a primal warning of waswas whispering in my ear. I leaned closer, my ear inches from the cold steel of the back door, when a sudden, high-pitched scream tore through the air. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony, the cry of a soul being crushed by a jinn. I fell back into the dirt, my breath hitching in my throat. This was no mechanical noise. It was the voice of a child, sharp and terrifying, echoing from the windowless bowels of the ice cream truck. The world turned silent as the exuberant shouts of the children at the front of the truck faded. I remained on the ground, paralyzed by a cold, numbing dread, until the rear door groaned open. Mr. Williams stepped out, his shadow falling over me, the his eyes, wide and shimmering with a false concern, fixed on me. "Tracy, isn't it?" he asked, his voice honeyed rasp that made my skin grow. "You look as if you've seen a ghost." I couldn't find my voice. I simply bolted, my feet pounding until I was safely behind my front door. But curiosity is a persistent Cochrane. A week later, driven by a need to silence the screams in my head, I returned. I waited for the rush to subside, watching from the shadows as Mr. Williams stepped away to dispose of some refuse. The back door was left slightly ajar, a beckoning maw. I crept forward and slipped inside. The interior was a nightmare of the occult. The walls were not lined with freezers, but with hundreds of photographs of the missing children, pinned like butterfly specimens. Notes and strange symbols were scrawled in the margins, and the air was thick with the copper tang of blood and the scent of old, unwashed fear.
I drew my phone, its narrow beam of light cutting through the gloom like a blade. As I moved deeper into the metallic cavern, something cold and dry brushed against my ankle. I looked down, expecting a stray animal, but my light revealed a rusted iron cage. Inside, a small, trembling hand was pressed against the bars, fingernails broken and stained with the same dark earth I had seen on Miguel. I stifled a scream, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I swung the light around, and the true horror of the RV was unfolded. 5, 6, 7 cages were stacked like wood in the darkness. Inside each one, a child, gagged with heavy rocks, eyes wide with a heart stared at me. They saw the ultimate darkness. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered. I see you, my children, Tracy, Mr. Williams whispered. He stood in the doorway, his face twisted into a mask of terrifying devotion. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man possessed by a Kabith spirit. He spoke of the children as humans, but as a collection, a way to fill the void of his own barren life. He claimed he hadn't taken them, but saved them, as if he were a shepherd tending to a flock of the damned.
The air in the van became heavy, thick with the stagnant breath of the trapped and the metallic tang of the cages. Mr. Williams stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floor like a grasping hand from Ar-Rakim. "I've had my eye on you for a while, Tracy," he murmured, his voice dropping to a low, melodic hum that vibrated in my very bones. "I think you'd make a magnificent addition to my gallery." He lunged. It was a movement fueled by a frantic, unholy energy. I didn't think, I acted on a primal instinct for survival. I hurled my phone at his face. The corner of the device struck his eye with a sickening crack, and he howled, a sound that wasn't human, but the shriek of an Ifrit denied its prize. I didn't wait to see him fall. I bolted through the door, my feet barely touching the ground as I raced toward the light of my home. By the time the police arrived, the street was empty. The massive RV, Mr. Williams, and the caged children had vanished, as if they were nothing more than a fever dream born of the summer heat. No trace was ever found. To this day, when the wind carries the distant, distorted jingle of an ice cream truck, my skin turns to ice. I know he is still out there, prowling the outskirts of town, his collection ever growing, waiting for the next child to crave a taste of his sear-laced sweetness. I almost stopped the video here, because what appears next isn't human. Nahid Hassan kept saying one thing. It's standing right behind me. If you're still watching, subscribe to Nightfall Series 2. In the heart of the scorched plains, the sun was a relentless tyrant, an eye of Iblis that turned the asphalt into a shimmering lake of fire. For us children, the distant, distorted jingle of the ice cream truck was the only prayer that mattered, a melodic promise of an oasis in a desert of boredom. We all knew Harry. He was a man who looked as though he had been gnawed upon by life itself, balding, weary, and draped in a perpetual shroud of melancholy. Yet Harry was a gentle soul amidst the harshness. He remembered our names and our usual sins of gluttony,
greeting us with a tired smile that never quite reached his eyes. Even the adults would linger by his rusted chariot, seeking a moment of respite and trading whispers of his tragic past. A divorce that left him hollow, and a son lost to the iron bars of a prison for crimes of blood. He was a fixture of our community, a tether to normalcy. We never suspected that the heat would eventually melt the thin veneer of his sanity, or that the cool treats he provided were merely a distraction from the fire smoldering within his own spirit.
One afternoon, the sky turned the color of bruised plums, and the air grew so heavy it felt like being buried alive in the sands of Al-Akaf. I was walking home late, my shadow stretching out before me like a dark, elongated jinni. The silence of the neighborhood was absolute. No dogs barked and no birds sang. Then I saw it. Harry's truck was creeping down the road, moving with a predatory slowness that made the hair on my neck rise. The usual jingle, that cheerful, tinny melody, was absent. The silence of the vehicle was more deafening than the loudest siren. Driven by a thirst that felt like a curse, I ignored the internal alarm of my Fitra and waved the truck down. As it hissed to a halt, I noticed the windows were tinted darker than I remembered, reflecting the dying light like the eyes of a shaitan. I stepped towards the service window, expecting Harry's weary face, but the air that drifted from the truck's interior was not cold. It was hot, smelling of copper and ancient, sun-baked dust.
As the sliding glass moved with a mechanical screech, I froze. The man behind the counter was not Harry. Gone was the balding, weary face of the town's fixture. In his place stood a younger man, his skin as pale as a funerary shroud, and his eyes burning with an unsettling, feverish intensity. He looked like a marad that had shed its skin to walk among the living. "Where's Harry?" I stammered, my hand tightening around the crumpled bill in my pocket. The stranger didn't answer immediately. He leaned forward, the heat radiating from his body in waves, his gaze devouring my features with a hunger that was not of the stomach, but of the soul. "Harry has found his peace," the man finally whispered, his voice sounding like the sliding of scales over dry stone. "I am his successor. I provide the harvest now." He reached into the freezer, but instead of the usual frost-covered popsicles, he pulled out a container wrapped in heavy, dark cloth. As he unwrapped it, a thick, cloying scent filled the air. Sweet, yes, but underneath lay the unmistakable, metallic tang of a dabiao. This was no ordinary ice cream. It was a dark offering, and the realization hit me like a blow. The town's beloved oasis had been poisoned by a new, more ancient thirst.
The stranger held the container toward me, and as the dark cloth fell away, I saw the substance within. It was a deep, visceral red, not the artificial hue of a strawberry popsicle, but the thick, pulsating crimson of a freshly beating heart. It shimmered under the dim bulb of the truck, looking less like a frozen treat and more like a congealed pool of death. "Taste the essence of the neighborhood," the man urged, his lips curling into a jagged smile. I looked past him, into the depths of the truck,
and saw Harry. He was there, but he was no longer the man who remembered our names. He was slumped against the back wall, his skin a sallow gray, his eyes wide and fixed in a permanent stare of ruab. His arms were bound with thick, oily ropes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and a series of small silver tubes ran from his veins into the very churning vats of the ice cream machine. The unique, addictive sweetness the town had craved wasn't a secret ingredient. It was the life force of the broken, being drained and frozen to satisfy a hunger that was truly no.
The realization shattered my mind like ice under a hammer. The stranger, the ghoul who had usurped the throne of our summer joy, stepped closer, his fingers stained with the same crimson essence that filled the tubs. I realized then that the worse-for-wear appearance Harry had carried for months wasn't just depression. It was the slow, systematic draining of his very soul to feed the town's unnatural addiction. I turned and fled, the heat of the truck's engine roaring behind me like the gates of Jahannam swinging shut. I ran until my lungs burned with the fire of 1,000 suns, never looking back at the silent, dark vehicle that had turned our childhood sanctuary into a slaughterhouse of the spirit. When the authorities finally raided the vehicle days later, they found it abandoned in a sun-bleached field. Harry was gone. The stranger was gone. All that remained were the empty vats, lined with a dark, iron-scented residue that no chemical could strip away. Whenever the summer heat reaches its zenith, the children still listen for the jingle, but I know doors. I know that somewhere in a town just like this one, the harvest has begun again, and the ice cream is never as sweet as it seems.
This video is over, but the story isn't, because Nahid Hassan was never found. And if your phone turns on by itself tonight, just know you've been chosen. Subscribe to Nightfall Horrors 002, because you're not safe anymore.